Nice space.
Cool, and it looks like we've got some attendees now joining us. So welcome if you're just joining this Insights live session with Space Store, and also welcome to everyone who's joining us through our live stream on LinkedIn Live. We're just going to give it a few minutes as everyone gets logged in. I can see the numbers climbing already. So give it probably about 30 to 40 seconds, I think, and we'll make a start. So. Okay, well, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're dialing in from around the world, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining Space Store in this Insights Live panel discussion. And my name's Alex Harvey. I'm Global VP of Sales with Space Store. So really excited to be moderating the conversation today, and also very excited to be joined by our panelists we're going to introduce to you shortly. Again, welcome to everyone who's joined us via the Zoom platform, and also welcome everyone who's joining us on the LinkedIn live stream. Now, today's conversation and the title for today is Considerate Over Corporate. So that's the starting point of our discussion. And I think in some ways it takes a very kind of a harsh and stereotypical approach that you can be either considerate or corporate. And really looking forward to hearing the panelists' views around this today. I know certainly from many of the corporate organisations that we've worked with at Space Store, there are many, both historically and right now and for the future, who are both corporate and considerate. So arguably some of the most successful global companies. So without further ado, going to introduce our panelists to you today. So Jill, perhaps we can get you to introduce yourself. Jill Wheeler is the Regional Director of Interior Design with Ewing.
Yes, hi, good morning, or whatever part of the day you are. Thanks for inviting me to talk to you guys today. I am headquartered in Philadelphia, currently the Regional Director of Interior Design at Ewing, which is about a 450 person A&E firm. We've got 8 offices around the country. We specialize in a number of different markets, predominantly science and technology and healthcare. I've been doing this a long time. I've been in the design industry since about 1990, started in New York City, moved to Dallas, now in Philadelphia. And so I've seen the workplace change a lot during that time, and certainly the design of the workplace is changing along with it, though honestly, nothing has been like the last 2 years. So happy to be with you today.
That's great. Thanks, Jill, and very excited you're with us. And we also have Antony Wiltshire, who's the Director of Workplace and Facilities for Edelman. Antony?
Hello there. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah, we can hear and see you very well. Thank
Excellent.
You.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Antony Wiltshire. I look after Edelman's second largest office globally. We're here in central London, sort of very close to Westminster. We've got about 600 staff. I've steered us through the coronavirus pandemic and our return to work. This is an interesting discussion because Edelman is we provide PR services for a very broad mix of companies, some very big names: Microsoft, Xbox, Shell, Starbucks, Nissan UK, a lot of big companies, some financial institutions, big pharma companies. So of course, what that means for us is that we provide, or our office space is very diverse, because the team that's working on Xbox is going to have a very different culture and a very different feel to a team who are working for a financial institution. So we've got a lot of variety. And I've been here for about 8 years, steered us through a lot of stuff, nothing quite like the last 18 months, but it's all character building stuff.
That's great. Thanks, Antony, and very glad to have you with us today. And we're also joined by Russell Kingston, who's the Managing Director for Space Store USA. Russell.
Thanks, Alex, and likewise, great to be on the chat today. I think, as we've said, this is a very exciting time, and I'm really enjoying starting to see what companies are actually doing as they roll out schemes to look at the workplaces. We're coming back to the office after the COVID period, so it's very exciting to see the different pilot schemes that are going on, the experimentation that's happening, and how companies are starting to attract employees back to the workspace, enabling them to get the best out of it in a perhaps a different use case than it was before. So very interested to join the conversation today and find out some more about what our panelists are doing, and also to hear from you in the audience. We'd love questions as we go through, so please put them in.
Great, thanks, Russell. And just to remind you of the title today, if you only just joined us, so the conversation is Considerate Over Corporate. So that's where we're starting our conversation today. And as Russell's already mentioned, we'd love to encourage you to share the questions or the challenges that you're working through as an organisation, or that you're working through with your clients. The benefits of these kind of wider discussions really bring the insights and the experience that the entire audience, but also that our panelists can bring to all of the challenges that we're facing. And I think what we're seeing, and from a Space Store perspective, what we're seeing is that every client we work with is at a different stage in their plans, their return to the office plans, depending on where they are globally and whatever the current government guidelines are in each global location. So, for example, in the UK, there was a big announcement last week where we're all focusing on July the 19th as the day when people can officially be back in the office. So that's kind of helped to solidify some of the plans for many of our clients here in the UK. But of course, that differs every location globally. And the other thing which we've also seen is there's a good number of very public announcements around how organisations are expecting their teams to use the offices. I saw a great quote the other day on a post on LinkedIn. A guy was saying, the office is no longer a place of work or a mindless ceremonial day trip of variable use, which I thought was quite a good way of describing what the office maybe used to be, and really understanding what is the purpose for the office, and then using this conversation starter of Considerate Over Corporate. I think reimagining the future of work, and particularly looking at that from the point of view of employee experience. What does the employee experience, or how does the employee experience feed into the way that offices are both intended to be used and also designed? And we've certainly seen with many of our clients globally a wide variety of approaches, particularly looking at individual differences in employees, both their home lives, maybe their skills and capabilities, maybe their mindsets or personal characteristics, many other factors that come in, as well as the fact that circumstances are still changing. Things are still changing, and I think will continue to change over the next 12 months. So maybe we can kick it off, Antony. We'd love to hear what you're seeing from the perspective of your own organisation. What Edelman are doing in terms of understanding what your employees want, and also how can we facilitate what the organisation wants. Perhaps you can give us some insights you can share.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So, like everybody else, back last spring, we were watching what was happening in Italy and Spain, and thinking, oh, that doesn't look very good, does it? But not really recognizing that it was coming in our direction. And I sort of describe it as the white line of the tsunami in the distance. And of course, what you didn't realize was it was coming and it was going to completely overtake everybody. But we just didn't really see it. And of course, then suddenly March happened and everything went completely crazy. And to start off with, the first thing that most of us, certainly most of the people who look after offices were probably thinking was, oh my God, I'm looking after an office that no one's going to be in, and I've got no idea when they're going to come back. Of course, then very quickly we realized that actually we were now suddenly, for me personally, I was looking after an office with 600 people, one office, and then, well, two, I've got Dublin as well. But I then suddenly realized, actually, I've now got 600 offices with, all the people around. So our responsibility has changed quite a lot. But what we have found is that the London operation for Edelman has been very, very different from every other Edelman office around the world, to my knowledge, in as much as we've actually had once we were able to, we've actually had quite a steady stream of people coming back into the office, to the point where even if I roll back 2 months ago, certainly on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and a Thursday, we were having at least 150 people a day in. That's a quarter of the workforce, up to sort of over 200. And what we did was we reconfigured the office and spread all the desks out. Physically, the desks were still there, but we took away positions so that people could feel safe. And obviously, we brought in place a lot of cleaning processes and so on to allow people to come back and to feel confident and comfortable. And as I said, really, it feels quite extraordinary, the amount of people that we've had coming in comparison with discussions with peers around the office. But in answer to your question, really, I suppose, about what people are coming back for, you have a mix. You've got the people who've got extremely challenging working from home environments. And when we've had, for example, somebody, one member of staff, when lockdown began, and the closest thing that she had to a seat in her flat was the toilet seat. And, clearly people can't work for 8 hours or 12 hours or whatever it's going to be a day like that. That's just not going to work out for them. So you've got people who are in multiple occupancy and, all huddled around a table and struggling with their broadband connection. So, we've always recognized that even through lockdown that if people were struggling, the office was open and we made sure it was safe. And of course, because we're doing a lot of work with clients all the time, we had a lot of items that we were sending out effectively sort of, to influencers and stuff like that. So we were always there, and my team have been in pretty much every day. But what we're noticing now is that people are coming back and they're really expecting something different, which is much more about, congregation, meeting and greeting. And definitely there's some lockdown fatigue there as well. People are desperate to meet each other again. But there's a tremendous buzz with people who are in the office. It's a sense of relief. It's completely palpable. And it's quite exciting. So it's nice to be in this position now. And, we're hopeful that July the 19th comes and things are looking really good. That's what we're really aiming for.
That's very good. Thanks for sharing that, Antony. And there's some interesting points which I think we'll pick up on. And then maybe, Jill, if you could also give us the view that you found within your own organisation. And I know you work with a lot of clients as well. So perhaps you could give some interesting points or some highlights or some summaries from what you're seeing with the client organizations.
Yeah, I would love to be able to say that we know where we're going right now, or that our clients know where they're going. But this is a very, very dynamic transitional period. I think it's very difficult to generalize for companies and for individuals right now on what is working. I think one of the biggest surprises to me was how quickly our organization, as well as our clients, moved to remote work. We were literally, when the dictate came down in March that we could no longer work in the city of Philadelphia, people were literally able to begin working remotely from their home 2 days later. It was really, really fast how everybody was up and running. And I I think I'm sure there are cases where that didn't happen so seamlessly, but with our organization and with a lot of our clients, it was that way. And so in the first stage of this, as a design firm, our clients were reaching out to say, how do we create healthy workspaces? And so there was a lot of energy put into, how can we help our clients strategize about making people feel comfortable in the workplace? And of course, at that point, it became about social distancing, communication, cleanliness, divisions between workstations, spreading people out, shift work. There was a tremendous amount of thought put into that. And I'm sure you've seen all the white papers. And then I think it's been a slower process. I'm picking up some of your accent in just a second. It's been a slower process in how do we get back to whatever is going to be this. I'm tired of the phrase new normal, but it is kind of that. So now I see, whereas it was kind of a very quick reaction, I think we're seeing a very slow migration into whatever will be next. And I think different people throughout organizations, different levels, have entirely different points of view. Most of the senior people in my organization and in other organizations are back at work. They came back as soon as they could, probably a year ago. What we're finding is that now it's about attraction to the workplace. How do you get the younger, more mobile people back? What's going to be in the workplace that is going to convince them, one, that it's healthy, and two, that it's important for their career path, their learning, their mentorship, their collaboration, for them to get back into the office. So we are starting to see some changes in how the workspace, the office, is imagined, and it is starting to be a little bit about the attraction of the workplace. What's it going to provide that working remotely doesn't provide? And just as kind of a remark that I asked some colleagues of mine how they would state where we are right now. And some of them said, I thought this was a good remark. It's now working from anywhere more than ever. The office is only the heart of this broader workplace ecosystem, where third places and home are other parts. So, what is that heart now? What is it that heart is going to be for companies moving forward?
Sorry, I'm muted. That's a great analogy, Jill. I love the parallels with the heart, because that's where the kind of the life beat of that organization happens. I was interested in your point around the generational mix and the differing kind of responses you've had. And I know, Antony, you've got a very wide mix of generations within Edelman. Have you seen something similar? Have you seen the same kinds of responses that Jill described?
Definitely. For us, a lot of the senior leadership were just desperate to come back and are in. And in fact, just the office next to me, I've got our European president, CEO. So everyone is in, and they have been for a long time. But I suppose really for us, the buzzword now is hybrid, because what we recognise is that we have got, I've got 150 people in the office today. But there's 600 out there. So that means 3/4 of them aren't in. So what we recognise is that we've been opening up meeting rooms, albeit with distancing and all the usual stuff. But it's been really important for us to look at the technology, because, we all know that if the senior leadership are in, and there are some people who are going to be in every day, some people just come in every day because they can now and they live close enough. You are going to be at a disadvantage in as much as you're going to miss the nuance. If you've got the COO sitting the other side of a table to you, and everybody else is on a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever it happens to be, it's going to be very, very difficult for the people at home to feel that they're absolutely part of it, because they will miss some of the nuances that you can get from physically being in the office. We've also, the other challenge that we've got is that, inevitably in the last 18 months, there's been churn of staff. People have come, people have gone. So you've got a lot of staff, a lot of them quite junior, who have never been in the office, never met their line manager, and the real challenge is trying to get that culture to work remotely. So hybrid is a really big thing for us. The other thing that's quite interesting that we've discovered is that when you're working at home, and Alex, you're clearly in a cardboard box there at the moment. We can see that. You've got lots of peace and quiet, and you can get on and do your stuff. There's not too many distractions apart from perhaps the cat jumping on your keyboard every now and then. So, but of course, once you get back into the office, yes, you've got the buzz of being in an office. You've got the buzz of interacting with colleagues and seeing people you haven't seen for the last 18 months, or meeting people that you've only ever met on a video screen for the first time. But you've also got a lot of noise and a lot of distractions. So one of the big challenges for us is that a lot of people really want quiet space. So for us to try to find a balance, because some people want the buzz and some people want to actually come in because they genuinely can't get quiet space at home. Other people have got quiet space at home, but now they're coming back into the office and they still want that. So we've got a challenge, and this sort of manifests itself even in the simplest things like people. We've stopped giving people binaural headsets. Now everybody gets a monaural one, because what we found was that people who are on Zoom calls talk very loudly. And so we want to make sure that they are a little bit more considerate. We've got rid of all the telephones off everybody's desks. Everything's become a soft phone. So everybody is using their computer in a different way, and they are very, very much more flexible in doing stuff, but they're also a lot louder. So we want people to be aware of just how loud they are, how they're coming across, and being considerate to their colleagues. It's that whole consideration piece, which is an important one.
Very interesting, and what I'm hearing from what's coming through from both yourself and Jill is people are starting to rethink what the office is for, what kinds of activities and tasks they need to be in the office for, or maybe what they don't need to be in the office for, and maybe from the difference that's come out between either the different levels of seniority within the organisation or the different generational split or mix. Maybe the other thing that, from a management perspective, is being in the office actually gives the opportunity for other people to interrupt you, which is a good thing, because that's when you can learn the challenges and issues they're facing. They can maybe learn from some of your mentoring and some of the experience that you can bring to share with them. So I think there's the whole culture that's built in the office. As we said, there are some things you can do remotely, but there are also some things that don't really happen remotely, those personal connections. Go on, Russell. What are your thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting just hearing how it's been practically working out for you, Antony. And I suppose one thought in my mind really was, how prescriptive are you being here? Obviously, you've done some things like you mentioned with the headphones, etc. But how prescriptive are you being? Are you telling people what activities they can do within the workspace? Or are you just letting it happen and seeing where it goes?
Well, I suppose, obviously the foundations are, we wanted to make sure the office was safe. So we had to get all of those processes in place. But at the same time, I'm a big believer that you can't do too much, finger wagging, because people will just rebel against it. So we put all the processes in place, and we've done things like make sure that every night the whole place is completely sanitized. So these things are just happening continuously. We've also got cleaners on site who are continuously doing, wiping down frequently touch points, all of the stuff that you need them to do, whether it's a photocopier touch screen or the door handle going into the loo. Talking of door handles, we've made sure that, for example, all of our doors, you can open them with your arm. You don't need to touch anything. So, and obviously sanitizers everywhere, all that stuff. But no, what we're trying to do is we've put the framework in place to make sure that people feel safe. That's the most important thing for us. We want to make sure that when they come in, clearly we can't control what their experience is getting into central London. And, if you're walking or if you're cycling, we've been able to help there. And we've changed one of our meeting rooms to a cycle store, for example, because we recognised that the building was kind of inundated with bicycles. So we solved that one. So we provided the framework, we provided everything, the flexibility and the processes to make sure that people feel as safe as they can be when they're in the office. And I never get any feedback so far from anybody saying, "Oh my God, I'm never going back here. That was terrible." I've had feedback from people talking about what their experience on the tube was like, and that being a challenge. But certainly, once they're within our demise, we're really trying our best to look after them. But also a really big part for us is very much about people taking ownership for their conduct. And we've got to recognize that when people are in the office, everybody's got a different attitude to this. Everyone's got a different approach, on how they view coronavirus. And I remember having a conversation with our COO at one stage where we were just talking about the idea of perhaps even having like a wristband or something, so that if you're red, you're completely terrified and you want to keep away from everybody, you're here, but it's kind of under duress. I don't really want to be here, but I'll do it. If you're amber, you're kind of slightly agnostic about it, and you'll interact with people, but you'll be careful. And if you're green, you're just hugging everybody. I mean, not that I recommend anyone hugs anybody, but you've got a very different attitude. But we then came to the conclusion that we would feel a bit like an all-inclusive holiday camp. So we decided against that idea. So really, for us now, it's much more about, we've provided the area, the teams can come in. What we often find is that a team will come together on one day. They'll say, right, Thursday, we're all going to come in and we're going to interact. So we find that, a team will all be in together, and most of them will be there. I mean, obviously some will be working from home, but most of them will be together. And as long as they're safe, and as long as they're respectful of each other, and they conduct themselves in the right place, and we've got the right processes to safeguard everybody as well, because you need to. I'm much more about giving people flexibility and actually letting them take ownership and letting them be responsible, because they're all grown-ups.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What you were saying there about kind of that personal responsibility is something that's interesting, because we've all been away from the workplace. Everyone's kind of forged their own channel and working from home or wherever they're working. And in that sense, we've kind of separated more from the corporate pack, as it were. When we're together in the office, there's certain things that are norms and perhaps ways that people behave and operate. But we're all drifted apart a bit, and it'd be very interesting to see whether do we have to accommodate a much wider spread of modus operandi, if we like?
Well, you know what? Yes,
people come back together again.
It's interesting, because when we first did this, we, like everybody, we went through a lot of detailed analysis and really trying to understand what we needed to do. When we first reopened the office, we had Group A and Group B. You can't call them Team A and Team B, because Team B will always feel disadvantaged. So everyone was Group A or Group B. We split the workforce. Group A will be in for 2 weeks, and then, Group B were working from home, and then we would do the rotation. We had all the desks were still available, but what we were doing was we were closing off desks, putting actually covers over the chairs, and having signs on the desk, and really trying to instill in people the idea that it's kind of socially unacceptable if you're in Group B to come in when Group A are in, because you're jeopardizing Group B and Group A by doing that. But we quite quickly recognized that just wasn't working for us at all. We just weren't getting people coming back. It was confusing. It just didn't work. So we took all of that away. And instead what we did was we took out every other desk. It's kind of the same thing as Group A and Group B, but we physically removed the chairs and the monitors and everything else. We took everything off the desks, including landline telephones. We ported all our numbers out into the cloud. We went completely digital, which was, with my business continuity and disaster recovery hat on, it was great, because I've tried to get to the stage where actually, yes, you can do all your work from Starbucks if you need to. Who are one of our clients, actually, but that's neither here nor there. So we wanted to get to the stage where really we weren't reliant on the office anymore, and then basically we dropped the whole idea of people being in for 2 weeks or not. And then we adopted a different approach, really, where it was much more about monitoring and people being responsible and talking, letting us know if anyone became infected, and then we can do our contact tracing because we know who's come in, because we've got desk booking, and and we also funneled all the staff so they can only come in via reception, where they will be met with a receptionist who's always got a thermometer and is always checking everybody, so we know who's coming into the office. We can really keep an eye on that. Heaven forbid that we needed to do some drastic contact tracing. Generally, it's been really good, and we haven't had to do too much of it, and we've been able to contain it with all the safety measures that we've got in place. It's been okay.
That's good. I'm interested, Jill, to hear what you're seeing with your clients, because you mentioned yesterday, as we were just talking about this panel, and about the challenge some of your clients are having in some of the roles within their workplaces have to be done from the workplace.
Yeah, it's been what I'm seeing in our workplace and with clients is kind of this segmentation that's happening. We talked a little bit about kind of generational or seniority, but then there are also jobs that have to be done in the workplace. So you can imagine that all of the support jobs for, let's just say, biomedical companies, those support jobs, accounting, HR, marketing, they can all work from home. And then you have, say, the scientists who are doing lab work. They all have to be in the office. So I really think that it's brought up HR issues that no one had really anticipated. One of the things that we've seen back when we were looking at social distancing, which, as I've said, is not the approach we're with now. We're definitely more in this hybrid. Let's get back to what this new normal is. We are on the road to kind of coming back in. But during the period that we were helping clients mitigate the worries about COVID in the workplace, we were talking about segmenting the plans, which was kind of interesting to me. If you think about a floor plate and you think about how many people come in contact with others and how infection can spread, one way to kind of shut that down would be to segment your workplace, look at different ways to create new entrances into the workplace, and then, demarcate that this is group 1 space, this is group 2 space, this is group 3 space, so that you can reduce the amount of cross contamination, of surfaces touched or whatever. And then it makes the contact tracing easier. So that was one of the strategies we were looking at, as opposed to one desk in, one desk out. You basically are kind of limiting the populations within a space. But now it is truly this these kind of differences in the work population are really coming to light. And I was just in a conversation yesterday about what the hybrid is going to look like. What is hybrid going to look like? Do you base hybrid on seniority, meaning the more senior people get the 10 days working from anywhere, and the more junior people that need more mentorship, they need to be in the office. They can be working from anywhere only 20% of the time. So wow, think about what that's going to do when that rolls out to to how people see their colleagues within the workspace. The amount of time that you can work from anywhere is going to become a huge bargaining chip. Yeah. People are going to be pushing for seniority, to be moved up the level, not in order to get more money, but to get more flexibility. My head is still reeling. There is a new world coming. And ironically, we did recently have a internal conference on the difference between equality and equity. And the idea that equity is about recognizing the differences in people and accepting that this person, needs to be working from anywhere more, or this person, needs to be in the office more. I think it's bringing up some very sensitive issues in the workplace that companies have been able to just put a lid on for years and years because they were the bosses. But this whole idea of the consideration of the individual and what they need to as an employee, and what's going to help them contribute to your company, that is becoming number one priority. That all said, all that, but then, once in a while, you'll hear somebody at the top say, oh, we're doing all this. We want to keep everybody happy. We want to attract people. But then someone will say, and if this isn't enough, then maybe it's not the right fit. So it's new, very, very new thinking.
Yeah, and it's, as you're saying, everything's up in the air right now. But what's the best approach you've seen so far in the work that you've been doing?
I think, as Antony was saying, there's going to be a hybrid situation where people start to be responsible for how they use that flexibility. And it is undeniable that if you're sitting next to the CFO in a conference room and everyone else is on Zoom, that is a choice that everyone is making. It could be less of a choice or more of a choice, but it's a choice, and it is going to affect how people grow within companies.
There's also the aspect of presenteeism, I think, and that's, if you're sitting at home, that means people generally are logging on earlier and they're staying on later. And if you're in the office, you could have some people who are always coming in because they know that their boss is always in, and they know that by doing that they feel that's going to give them some kind of an advantage over somebody who isn't coming in. So that's a difficult one. I can see we've got a question that's come through around technology. I mean, clearly, the technology in meeting rooms has got to improve. So, for example, one of the things that we've done is we've just installed some. We looked that you can spend so much money on technology, and I'm unconvinced that it's actually worth doing all of that. But for example, what we've realised is that we might be in a boardroom scenario where, because we've had to socially distance the attendees, some people could be 20 foot away from the camera. If they're sitting at the furthest position away from the screen, and they're very, very tiny, and you might be able to hear them, you might not. So we've had to invest in some really good technology around some microphones, which I can only describe as black magic, the way those things work, because they're still at the front of the office, but my goodness, they can hear everything. And we've also got cameras which by sound detect who's speaking, and then the other camera zooms in on that person. So we're in a position where somebody can be at the back of the meeting room and be the size that we are on this call at the moment. So there's some quite clever stuff that we can do, which definitely is more advantageous for the people who are still at home. And we have got a desk booking system. So we've actually gone with Condeco, and again, that's helped us with reporting, so we understand who's coming in. It would help us with contact tracing if we need to do that. And it's it helps everybody sort of visually. And some people really can't read a floor plan, but it's quite useful if you want to sit next to a particular colleague, then you can see that they're where they're sitting, and you can book, or you can book on behalf of a colleague. So desk booking is a very, very useful solution, and I think there will be more of that. And I think that the thing that we were all, certainly anybody when the outbreak started was terrified was the whole concept of hot desks. I actually think we're probably now in a position where we've got hot desks on steroids. We're doing them more now than we've ever done. which might seem counterintuitive to the idea of people being concerned about infection and stuff like that. But of course, what we've now done is that a hot desk now is, well, a desk is now a screen and a docking station. So you've got a USB-C cable. If you want to bring your own keyboard in, you're very welcome, but then you either keep that in your locker or you bring it in with you. So when you go and dock, the desk is nice and clear, it's been fully sanitized, and your touching stuff is minimal because it's either your own keyboard and mouse that you brought with you, or you're just using your the laptop keyboard. So we really try to do that, and everything is as bookable as we can be, or as it can be. And so hot desking is actually here more than it's ever been now, which seems kind of crazy. But when you've only got half the desks in the office that you had before, you need a way to manage it. You can't have people what I would call nesting, where they've got their shoes under the chairs and their photograph of Auntie Doris sitting on the desk. We can't do that anymore. Yeah. So yeah, we use a lot of tech.
I have an unpopular prediction that I'm going to make. And I thank you, because this is actually something that I've been thinking quite a bit about just over the last bit that we've been talking the last few days. I'm afraid Zoom meetings are here to stay. I was in a presentation, an interview recently for new work, and the client group was about 20 people. And our interview group was another 20 people. So it was this huge meeting. And everybody was lined up on the screen like Hollywood Squares, if you're old enough to remember that. And it was actually very effective. Everyone's face was kind of the same size. Everybody had the opportunity to speak up. It was a great democratizer, in a way, of the meeting process. And as much as everyone complains about being in meetings all day and being on Zoom or GoTo, whatever it is, I think that it's working. Okay, that may be the unpopular thought. The other thing that I have really seen, and Antony, you alluded to this, people have been working from home for so long that coming into the office, they're finding the distractions and the noise to be overwhelming. And the Zoom meetings are kind of are making that even worse. So I'm also predicting that workstations will not get smaller. People will, whether they are hot desks or they are whether they're owned desks, I could see them kind of staying a reasonable size. I think people, through their working anywhere, are getting used to having a little bit more space and a little bit more opportunity to for quiet space.
Yeah.
So I think that, and then here's the thing that I'm going to predict, that we're not going to then need lots of conference rooms. We may need more private offices. We may need more of the quiet pods like you're in, Alex. But I think we're going to end up having, and this is not new, but I think it's just going to become functionally different. We are going to need to have more loungy casual spaces than we have now, and they're going to be real. They're not going to be amenities. They're going to be parts of the workspace in a way that they've been amenities before. Now they're going to be part of that ecosystem I was talking about.
So do you think that the workspace is going to become more open plan, or do you think there's going to be more smaller enclosed spaces compared to where it was before COVID?
I think there's going to be more enclosed spaces. Isn't that strange? Oh my gosh, 20 years ago, that was, anathema. We were all moving into the open. But I really think that, people were reclaiming that space before COVID. But now they are, it's coming back for another reason.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're in very open plan offices, and people want quiet space. So we've been installing pods, soundproof pods, so people can go in and spend some time in there and get their stuff done. That's interesting. But actually, interestingly as well, I have certainly since people have been coming back, everybody wants to use a meeting room. So and that's actually for meetings. So we're finding a lot of people are coming in there, and certainly to start off with, I was thinking, well, why? Obviously, we've socially distanced the meeting rooms and reduced the capacities and all that stuff so that people can be as safe as they can. But I find it really quite extraordinary that people would want to be in a box with some other people that they don't normally socialize with, breathing in that air. Clearly it's being circulated and so on, but it does seem like it's counterintuitive when there's a pandemic on. But yeah, everybody wants to have a meeting room, so they're extremely popular. So interesting time.
Yeah, ours are popular too, but it's people who are using them for offices.
See, we're quite intolerant of that. So if
they're literally,
room, we get them out.
They are calling them for the entire day, and because there are people who aren't in the office, there's more opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thanks for the answers there to the question that came from Lucas around technology. I guess the other thing I was wondering about technology was the whole concept of employee experience. And is there a way that you've seen to, I suppose, not just to measure employee experience using any of the technologies out there, but also maybe to anticipate some of the things that might become problems before that actually happens? And Antony, I know you've got a background in IT. Is that something you've seen at all? And I know within Edelman, the view of your employees is not just a stereotypical view of employees, is it?
No, that's right. And of course, as I've said, we've got lots of different tribes, I'm going to say, within Edelman, who all function in a different way or operate in a different way, and will expect different stuff from the office space. So it's really difficult, and I, just like everybody else at the moment, I'm planning. I'm trying to work out what's actually going to happen on the 19th of July. But I've got some plans if I need to suddenly accommodate more people. But for us, it's really going to be about flexibility and the ability to flex the space. We're really moving away from the idea of you just sitting at the same desk day in and day out, and the idea of just coming into the office if all you're going to be doing is taking telephone calls and typing emails, because frankly you don't need to be in the office for that. You need to come into the office for collaboration, to use tools that you just can't use anywhere else, to use the space to bounce off each other, the exciting innovative think tanks, all of the stuff that you really need that you just can't get from being on a Zoom call. But yeah, so at the moment, if I had a crystal ball and knew what was going to happen on the 19th, my suspicion is that actually things won't be that different because we've got a fair few people in already. I suspect that probably the 19th will come and go, and then it will just slowly start to come up. But I might be completely wrong, and I might have 300 people knocking on the door on the 19th wanting to come in. But I think it's really going to be more like September, as more, for us, a lot of our workforce are quite young. Some of them are vaccinated, some aren't. Some of them are single vaccination, they're waiting for their second one. So we're just really waiting to see. And our expectation, which we've now talked to everybody about, is the idea really that we would quite like people to be in the office for 60% of their week, which is 3 days. Now that doesn't mean you've got to be in for 3 days, but it would be nice if you could. So really, we've moved from the idea of it being an invitation to come if you feel safe or if you have a need to be there, to perhaps it's sort of moving more in the direction of an expectation, which is really absolutely what's happening everywhere. We're not unique by any stretch of the imagination for that. And actually, the workforce have been really cool about it. They seem to be okay at the moment with that as a concept, because it's not going to be a sledgehammer, a threat. You've got to be in, otherwise somewhere you're going to be disadvantaged. Absolutely. If you can't, or you don't want to, or you're in a position where it doesn't make sense, that's fine. It's not a problem. So we've got a lot of that going on. And then of course you've got the other challenge, which is that people who've, during during lockdown have been working at an office in London, or rather that their base is in London, but now they've decided to move to, Aberdeen or something. What are they going to do when they've got to spend 3 days? That's going to be an interesting commute. So you've got some interesting dynamics coming up. I'm looking forward to seeing how this one plays out, because people moving quite a long way away from the office was okay, but it might not be, because a lot of organizations now will be expecting people to be around for at least some of the week so that they can bounce off each other, which is going to be harder if you've got a hell of a commute on your hands.
That's a really interesting point. Just a little anecdote. I was talking to a colleague maybe a month ago and realized that she had picked up and moved her family to Seattle. And no one knew. I guess somebody knew, right? But wow, yeah, we've had people move all over during this time. They're still employees, yes, this is going to affect them. They are going to be noticeably absent.
Very interesting. Wow. And it's interesting your thoughts around employee experience, Antony. I think that's certainly something we've seen growing over the last few years, that the importance of understanding employee satisfaction, not just with the workplace, but with all aspects of their work-life balance. I guess and this has come through loud and clear in today's conversation from both of our panelists, that talking to your teams, understanding what their needs are, is really vital in being able to create the right kind of workplace experience. But can you share anything around not just meeting those needs, but really in exceeding those needs, in really wowing your teams as they come back in? I know, Antony, you mentioned around people feeling and seeing something different when they come back in, and I think some of the examples you've given around visible cleaning regimes being different, or maybe parts of the workplace being different because the desks are arranged differently. But any experiences or thoughts you can share around kind of really exceeding those needs and expectations from your people?
All right. Do you know what? Yes, we've done all the safety measures. We've done all of that stuff. We've tried really hard not to go overboard with the measures, so that people feel like they're walking into some a hospital as opposed to going into a place of work, hub, as perhaps it's more really than an office these days. But you know what? I think actually there's a lot of reassurance. Okay, reassurance is a really good word here. Okay, the first thing is what I was hearing anecdotally when I was talking to people, because obviously we've always been talking to people throughout all of this craziness. And to start off with, what became really obvious was that because myself and my team, we were in the office every day. The office was somewhere that people couldn't get into, but they actually felt like it was a safety blanket. So they just were comfort blanket. They were really happy to know that it was open, and there was such nostalgia when you were talking to people with the the office in the background, and people saying, "Oh my God, you're there," and they were so excited to know that it was open. Somehow it just made people feel reassured. So what we recognized quite quickly was that we tried to move away from, I'm going to say, the drama of people coming back into the office, and by that I mean, I don't want the people who are at home who haven't come in to look at the people who are in the office and think, "Oh my God, that must have been absolutely terrifying. Oh my God, that must be an awful experience to be in there at the moment," and be full of fear. What I actually, I think is more effective is that we're just open, and yes, there are safety measures, and yes, everybody is okay. It's just, these people have chosen to be in the office. You're working from home. It's fine. Do what you want to do. It's absolutely fine. But we're here if you want to come in. So we've really tried to not make it a big deal. It's more about reassuring people. The office is here. It's safe. If you feel like your journey is okay to get in, and that means maybe that if you come in at 10 o'clock in the morning rather than being on it with all the construction workers at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, that's fine. Do what works for you. Be reassured when you're here that everything's okay. And yes, there are some exciting new stuff. There's new things in the office, and I post that on the company intranet, and we talk about it on company town halls and stuff like that. But it's a comfort blanket. People know that the office is here, and it doesn't need to be a big deal to come in. Once you're here. But obviously, I recognise that some people will have a really challenging journey in, and others, it's nothing. It's fine, and it comes down to their attitudes as well. So it's reassuring. That's the important thing.
Good, great word, reassurance. How about for yourself, Jill? Have you seen any?
The wow, yeah, there definitely has been some wow, mostly for what we do in terms of technology that's provided to employees. One of the reasons I've gone into the office is that I have two spectacular, huge screens on my desktop. And when I'm working from home, I have this little laptop. So our company has made these huge screens and the laptops available to everyone, along with all these headsets and things that allow for better communication in an open environment. So that has been a wow. It's even wowed me. I think in terms of conference rooms, we've got pretty impressive visual screens in our conference rooms, but I think that trend is going to go even go up more and more, because you're trying to contrast the quality of the interaction you can do, in a Zoom call versus what you can do with this enhanced technology in the office. One of the most wow things that I have heard is a company who kind of recognized that this kind of hub and spoke model, the idea that the office is going to be the hub, the heart of their organization. They're considering scrapping a lot of their real estate and building an incredible cultural brand space in the center city that is going to be new and spectacular and a huge draw that's going to represent what the company is. And then people can just use their other spaces to do their work and come into this space for something that is really, really different and special.
Destination. It's a
Yes,
destination.
a destination workplace.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the biggest wow that I've heard being discussed.
Wow, that's incredible. Certainly made me feel wow when you described that. So we're just coming to our last few minutes. I know there's been a good few questions come in, and thanks again for all the questions that come from LinkedIn Live and also through Zoom. And just before we wrap up, I'd be interested in both Antony and Jill, the changes we've talked about and a lot of the technology we talked about. Has that been really expensive for you as an organisation to implement? Have you been able to make those changes simply and cost effectively, or how have you found that?
Desk booking, obviously everything's license based, so the bigger your office, the more expensive things get. We've been able to leverage because we're global. So what we did was we found ourselves in this position first in London. There's 67 Edelman offices around the world, and as I said, the London office is the second largest. But we found ourselves having to deal with this quite quickly, and actually for two things: obviously for the desk booking side of things, and also for the hybrid working solution as well. So we've ended up suddenly finding ourselves trailblazing and trying stuff out because we've got lots of people in the office to make sure that people are safe. So yeah, it is quite expensive. Obviously, the AV side of stuff is rather expensive. You can get some very whizzy cameras, but you're not going to have much change out of £12,000 by the time you bought one, and then you've got lots of meeting rooms, and I've got 38 meeting rooms, so it suddenly becomes quite expensive, and you've really got to think about which rooms it's appropriate to do it in, which ones actually the existing kit is fine. You've got to be sensible about it. Yeah, it's not cheap, and of course cleaning regimes. We've had it sort of evens out a little bit, because for the last 18 months. We haven't had very much cleaning whilst the office was closed and people were on furlough, and now cleaning is stepping up. So we're getting more people coming in, and we've had to do other stuff that we haven't budgeted for, like the nightly spraying down. So there's lots of stuff that we weren't expecting to have to deal with. But you know what, you have to take it on the chin, because you've got to make sure the place is safe for everybody.
Very good. Thanks, Antony. And Jill?
I'm less aware of the costs that the company has instilled. I'm fairly sure it's significant, and yet it's been the lifeblood, so it's been a priority. I have no doubt that it would be problematic for some companies to make the investment that would be needed. That 2-week or that 2-day turnaround that I said happened for people to go remote. That was what I imagined to be a huge lift. And I think probably many companies were challenged by it.
Unfortunately, well, we stress tested, thank God, we stress tested everything a few days before it really hit. So we basically made everybody work from home for a couple of days, and forced them to use the technology. And unfortunately, we'd migrated across to Office 365. We'd done what we needed to do, thank goodness. So we stress tested and made sure that when we were ready, when it actually happened, it wasn't a complete, craziness. It was already, we'd found all the problems, we dealt with them. So when people were instructed to go home, it was okay.
That's very interesting, and come to the end of our time now, unfortunately, but thank you very much to both of you for some great insights, much appreciated, and hearing some of that real life experience from clients of yours, Jill, and what you're actually doing yourselves in your own organisation, Antony. And thanks to all of you that have tuned in from LinkedIn Live and joined us directly on Zoom as well today. Much appreciated, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next panel. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
Antony. Thanks, Jill.
Bye-bye.